if there is any hypothetical matchup that really encapsulates the striker versus grappler debate, there is no better matchup to think about than this one. Anderson Silva versus Khamzat Chimaev. Prime for prime, who do you guys have winning? Well, if you ask me, this outcome isn't as complicated as you might think. Because, like every Khamzat Chimaev fight ever, it really just hinges upon one crucial question, right? What is that question? That question is, can Anderson Silva stop the takedown? And this is where we get into the different probabilities that are going to play out in this fight if it were ever to happen, right? So we have some relevant statistics here. And here's what happens if Silva is able to stop the takedown. For starters, we're going to go over both of these guys' career statistics. So as we can observe, Silva has a takedown defense of 69%, and Khamzat's career takedown success is 58%. Silva's career significant strikes comes out to 61%, while Khamzat's career significant strikes comes out to 54%, right? Now, it's very important to mention nuance where we also have to recognize that Khamzat is one of the greatest grapplers the sport has ever seen. And in Silva's era, he didn't really face grapplers such as Khamzat Chimaev. He faced Chael, he faced other guys who are able to grapple, but not to the level of wrestling and chain wrestling prowess that Chimaev holds, right? However, we saw in Khamzat Chimaev's last fight how if you have someone that's able to stuff the takedowns, someone that doesn't panic, someone that doesn't falter and shrink away from his suffocating pressure, we see that Khamzat actually begins to wilt himself. He tends to not deal with that very well, you know? And for that reason, I do think that if Anderson Silva would be able to stop the takedown as well as get up from the takedowns, I firmly believe, without a shadow of a doubt, that Silva would be able to find the finish late in round four. He would undoubtedly be able to find the finish late in round four. Why? Chimaev has had a historical cardio and weight cutting challenge. We saw how pretty much skeleton like he looked at the weigh in for his fight against Sean Strickland. You know, we've seen that once you're able to stop the takedown from Chimaev, he is discouraged from shooting again. Chimaev pretty much turned into a pro boxer round three against Sean Strickland. It was ridiculous. He was unable to sustain his chain wrestling, his chain takedowns, and against someone who was as accurate and who had such devastating knockout power as Anderson Silva did, I think he would inevitably find the finish against someone like Khamzat Chimaev. And I don't think that's crazy to say. A lot of people these days like to downplay Silva's era simply because the competition, just like in every sport, improves over time. You look at any sport across the world, the competition is going to improve over time, but that does not take away from the prowess and the elite level finishing that we witnessed with Anderson Silva, right? So for that reason, I do think that Silva KOs him late in round four, maybe even early round five, right? Now, that's just one possible outcome. We also have to look at what happens if Silva cannot stop the takedown, right? So Silva is unable to stop the takedown. I still think that Khamzat would win via unanimous decision in a UFC 319 style main event where Khamzat controlled Dricus du Plessis, who, by the way, has a 34% career takedown defense on the ground and won via aggressive, suffocating ground control. If Silva is unable to stop this, then this would almost certainly be the outcome, right? Just like pretty much every other Khamzat fight ever, which is why this hypothetical really hinges on the question of, is Silva able to stop the takedown? Now, which of these outcomes is the more likely one? Is it likely that Silva stops the takedown, or if he is taken on, is he able to get back up? Or is it more likely that Khamzat just ragdolls him for the entire 5 rounds? In my opinion, I think Hamzat's lack of cardio and weight cutting issues tells us that it's more likely that Silva, if he's unable to stop the takedowns, he would be able to get back up from said takedowns and find the finish late round four. Silva in his prime had amazing cardio, amazing jiu-jitsu, and as we all know him for, he had insane accuracy. And he didn't really have to touch you hard to knock you out. He would honestly use your own momentum going towards him against you, So I think that would likely be the outcome in this fight in a hypothetical matchup where we have someone like Anderson Silva, who is an absolute knockout artist, versus an absolute wrestling machine in Khamzat Chimaev. I don't know about you guys, but the pendulum seems to be swinging currently in the UFC between, you know, back to strikers becoming the dominant champions. For the last 5 to 7 years, the wrestlers have been dominating the UFC. Wrestlers have been champs at pretty much every weight class, but recently we're seeing that pendulum swing back in the direction of strikers. And with every sample size, with every fight that goes by, we get more data, right? More data that shows us what would potentially happen in a hypothetical match, between the legends of old versus the legends of today. And I do think that this recent bout between Strickland and Chimaev gives us some more insightful data on how we can perceive such a hypothetical. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys agree, disagree, somewhere in the middle, let me know in the comments, and I would love to debate you guys. Peace.